Hi, I'm Tony Kramer, Product Specialist with RDO Equipment Company. Welcome to the Agriculture Technology Podcast on RDO Equipment Company's YouTube channel.
Every day, there are phenomenal advancements being made in the field of agriculture technology. RDO Equipment Company is a leader in agriculture equipment and precision agriculture technology and is here with industry experts to bring you the latest news and information from RDO and John Deere. Thanks for joining us on the Agriculture Technology Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. This is episode number 96, and today we are going to be talking about SureFire Ag systems. Before we dive into the show, please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. You can subscribe to the show on the many different podcasting apps that we're streaming this to, such as Apple's podcasting app. It's on Stitcher, Overcast, SoundCloud, as well as many others. While you're out there, drop us a review. We'd love to hear what you think about the show. Lastly, make sure to follow RDO Equipment Company on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and catch all of our latest videos on YouTube. You can also follow me on Twitter at RDO Tony K. Now with that, let's get back to the show. I am really excited to welcome Blaine Ginther, who is the co-founder and national sales manager for SureFire Ag Systems. Thanks for joining us on the show today, Blaine. To get started, I really would like to hear a little bit more about you and your background and how you got involved in this industry.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today at RDO headquarters. In terms of my background, I grew up in Atwood, Kansas, in the northwest corner of Kansas. I left there after high school, went to college in Kentucky, and my first job was working for a company called Fastenal out of Minnesota. And with Fastenal, it was a very entrepreneurial background, and I was given the ability to make a lot of decisions, which laid the foundation for my love of business and business development and product development. After 10 years away from Atwood, I moved back because family and a rural connection was very important to me. I wanted to go out and live in the cities, and I did business in the cities, but really getting back to my rural roots was very important. My family's 6 generations back there, my children. And so we did that, took a leap of faith. I moved there and started working for a company who focused a lot on tanks, pumps, trailers for liquid handling of fertilizers, and some fertilizer application systems. They were some rudimentary systems, and I began delving into that, seeing a niche on how to work at improving the overall systems and the customer's experience. And with that, I was able to work with outside engineers to be involved in some of the first moving highway guidance systems, and brought a lot of the technical together to be able to go from speed and pressure control to automatic rate control, coupled in with a lot of the guidance systems. And so you go back 15 years ago or so, I was doing a handful of systems, and what you now see today are very common, multiple product control, section control, and that type of thing.
That's really cool to hear that you kind of got your career start here in Minnesota where we are today, so you're kind of back home a little bit. It's neat to hear that. I love to hear the background stories on how people got to where they are today, and it's different all over the board. You get a lot of people that born and raised in the ag industry, and you get other people that just find their way to the ag industry, so it's really cool to hear that. Let's dive into the SureFire Ag Systems, the company that you are a co-founder of. Tell our listeners a little bit about what the company is, why you decided to start it, where the idea came from.
Sure. Sort of in extending the story of application machine control, with the other company I was with, things started to get complex, as they do with precision ag, and there was a real focus on that. And with that, we needed to provide a more of a support arm for it. And I was fortunate enough to connect with and hire Matt Walters, who had grown up in Atwood as well. Our fathers went to high school together. And in a town of, at that time, when I grew up there, 2,000 people, we all know each other. And Matt had gone to K-State, and Matt was very well networked. And so I convinced him to move back to Atwood and work with me. And we did that for a while. And at that point, we saw the need to go out on our own. I felt the confidence that I had enough relationships, and it was built on a solid platform of technical knowledge that we would go and do that. And along with Matt, I started SureFire with Josh Walters, Matt's brother. And Josh has a strong engineering background. And Matt and Josh are both very analytical people. We work very well together. And when we started the company, we knew we didn't want a heavy-handed company. We wanted to make it a company where we were hiring good people to make good decisions and put our trust in those people. We're all three wired that way very much. So we started it in 2007. At that point, it was a good time to start in the ag business because corn prices were high, and we were able to transition from a lot of what I was doing was with grain drills. So we were transitioning then into corn planters. And one of the things that we knew was that a lot of the GPS technology was going to be showing up in the cab of the tractor, and that wasn't going to be the niche for us to serve. It was going to be expanding on the liquid application systems and providing a complete solution from the cab to the ground. And basically, we knew the success would be tied to allowing users to utilize the platform that they're using, the existing platform. And yes, we do sell some simple controllers, but tying into the John Deere systems and some of the other common precision ag platforms on the market served us well because people were, they were familiar with their own platforms, and so they weren't having to learn something brand new. And from there, we invested in a lot of the controllers and monitors and that type of thing, and began to technically understand all of these precision ag platforms and take ownership in them as if they were ours. 7 years ago, we created SureFire Electronics because we had been outsourcing our wiring harness needs, and with that, we weren't happy with the quality. So we invested in the equipment necessary to start that business up, and that's a separate business that falls under the SureFire Ag umbrella, but it has a separate P&L. And the goal there was to create a business that was a vendor to SureFire Ag, and the goal was to make it the best vendor SureFire Ag had. And then at that point, we knew that we could go out and work to try and bring other customers on board and build wiring harnesses for them. And from the time that we started building wiring harnesses, it has evolved to where we build electronic components that marry up with some of the advanced precision ag platforms, such as your John Deere systems, that they'll do a secondary job on the machine. A lot of times people don't know they're there, but they're there to enhance the experience.
And you guys today, you're still based in Atwood, Kansas. What number of employees and region that you cover, what does that look like with SureFire?
We've been very fortunate in our small town of Atwood to be able to find great people, and we've had some good success because of our dealer network across the country. But we've grown SureFire to nearly 60 employees now between the two companies. And geographically, we cover from corner to corner in the U.S. And in the past, we've done enough international business to maybe brag about. But this past year, we had some nice sales internationally. We just want to make sure that we focus our attention close to home, meaning the U.S., and we have territory managers that live in the different geographies of the United States, and they work directly with our with our dealer base and our retail customers.
And those 60 employees between the two companies, that they have a little bit of stake in the company too, correct?
Yeah, they do. We started an ESOP a number of years ago, which is employee-owned company. And from that, it's helped create a culture that we're very proud of. The original founders, yes, we provide a lot of direction and leadership, but with the employee ownership, our employees have a stake in the outcome, and that's both companies. And open book management is a part of it. And so we basically have people who can run businesses and take care of things and make decisions when they're dealing with our customer base, because they are owners, and so a lot of times, customers want to talk to an owner. Well, at SureFire, that could be just about anybody.
Now that we have a little bit of background on SureFire and kind of how you got started, let's dive into some of the products you guys offer. There's two that I really want to focus on, and then we have a couple other that we're going to touch on towards the end of the show here. But to get started, Blaine, you said your initial focus when you guys started SureFire Ag Systems was that liquid application. Let's talk about what SureFire offers as far as liquid application and what sets you guys apart from the competition.
Well, first of all, we have a passion for the liquid application systems, and that goes back to my initial passion and wanting to create a whole systems approach to this, because a lot of times what happens in the industry, I think fertilizer application systems get looked at as a sprayer project, and folks will go out and source a centrifugal pump, and a flow meter and a servo valve and try and tie that in and make all that work. And it can work, but it's not set up as a system. And we're very systematic thinkers. We employ electrical and mechanical and computer engineers to enhance this whole process, and we treat it like the science that it is. And so we take a very careful look at every component that goes into a system. And number one, they need to be very predictable on how they work. They need to have a longevity. We have a particular approach to where we try and use the most non-mechanical approach that we can to liquid application. And with liquid fertilizers, you're not always sure what you're going to get, especially when you work across a broad geography, and farmers next to each other may be using completely different products. We have a whole slew of different fertilizers that are used out there today. A lot of micronutrients are used, and so it's almost rare, I think, to just see one fertilizer going in the ground with the customer, unless it's a straight nitrogen product, but a lot of mixes. And so with that, you have viscosities that you have to deal with. You have particulates. Fertilizers can be slimy. They can be dark. So visualization is hard on rows. And so, yeah, we try to make it a very predictable outcome.
You talked about all the different components that are involved in your systems that you guys build at SureFire Ag Systems. Let's dive in a little bit about what each one of those components is and how it makes up that specific role. Starting with the electronics.
Sure. Well, I mentioned SureFire electronics and the wiring harness. And that would be the beginning of the system to where we plug into whatever rate controller we're connecting to. We really love plugging into the John Deere platform. That's been a very reliable sound system for us, whether it's GRC, the older rate controller, or rate controller 2000. We try and take ownership of those technologies. And from there, we would move down to our pump system, which is the Pump Right. Pump Right is a positive displacement diaphragm pump. Diaphragm pumps are meant to be hardy and stand the test of time. And the positive displacement, that gives us an advantage. And we have a proprietary motor and valve combination, PWM valve, built into that system to where we know we can run from 20 to 450 RPM with that pump. and that gives us a very steady output across that whole RPM range. So that's more than a 20-fold output that we're able to get. So we can run very low rates and very high rates and everything in between. And the pump right, you can run it dry. It will not burn out seals. It has tremendous lift. So we get into scenarios where people have front mount tanks or pull behind tanks, tractor saddles, tanks mounted on the implement. And it might be a variety of those situations. And we're able to mount the pump anywhere that's the most convenient for the customer and pull from those different locations, and that wouldn't be a challenge. There are a lot of pumping systems on the market that are just not that way. So Pump Right has been, we developed it early on and have continued to sell that and enhance it and improve upon it. And this past year, we rolled out a poly version of that pump, and we're very excited about that. But it just gives us very, very smooth output as well. It's very steady stream output with very little pulsation in the system.
Moving on down the line from the pump, we talk about the pump and the flow and all of that, but we need a way to measure that, the flow meter. Your guys' flow meter kind of stands out from others on the market.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What you see in most of the market is a turbine flow meter, and the fact is a turbine flow meter has moving parts, and with that, the first day that turbine flow meter goes to the field is going to be its best day ever. When it starts to wear, when you run into different viscosities, those flow meters, they don't compensate for those viscosities. And what we do is we use an electromagnetic flow meter. It's a product that I've been selling actually for 18 years, so going back to before the SureFire Ag days. So it's not new technology. It's a very sound and proven technology, and it's one that's proven to be just a very reliable piece of the system. And a benefit of that flow meter too is that every system that we ship out is going to basically have the same calibration number for the given flow meter size. And yes, you always want to do a catch test because that's a responsible thing to do, but very rarely do you have to change the flow cal number on those meters. And so it makes a very reliable system. There's basically a through hole. If you hold the flow meter up, you can see through it, no mechanical components, and it serves us very well.
Once you meter the product, we're pumping it out of the tanks with the Pump Right system, going through that electromagnetic flow meter. Now we need to meter or control the flow out to the all of the row units on the planter. That is another thing that is very specific to the SureFire liquid application system that is a really unique difference. Tell us a little bit about the metering tubes.
Sure. We've taken metering tube technology, and we've learned a lot about fluid flow dynamics over time. A lot of systems are built with orifices and some way to, with a small restriction in the line, to even the flow out to the rows. Orifices inherently have a very narrow flow range, a very small hole, and that can result in plugging, especially with the different fertilizer types that I talked about. Metering tube, on the other hand, if we take an 8-foot piece of a particular metering tube and we go about 3 times the diameter, we basically get a restriction because of line loss that allows us to control the flow to the row, and with an accuracy of 2 to 4% per row, that's going to be better than most of what you see in the industry. So we have less plugging. In fact, we eliminate plugging a lot of times with the large hole size there. And another advantage of the metering tube that we've learned a lot about is the laminar flow. And laminar flow basically allows us to get a broader range of flow than what an orifice or a spray tip would have. Those components have smaller holes, and they create a lot of turbulence in the line. Most of what is bumping up against that orifice is actually turning back and causing turbulence. A laminar flow and the metering tube, we don't have a shear face that we're hitting, so we're pushing a column of liquid down that metering tube line, and we have a very much more linear relationship between pressure and fluid flow output. And then with that, a very standard part of what we do is to pair two metering tubes in a manual way with a valve over the row. And this allows us to basically cover the range of about what 5 orifices would cover in a system. Plus, you're not having to change orifices. You can use one tube, the smaller one. You can open up the larger one, close the small one, or you can open them both up. And that manual dual tube system it's a very common choice in the industry and has proven to be just very, very reliable.
You led right into my next question, or the next component of the liquid application system. So you talk about the manual dual tube flow metering, or the manual dual tube metering tube system. There's also an automated system. So as we're kind of growing, whether it be different application rates or different planting speeds, there's starting to become a more and more broad range of fertilizer application. And there comes the LiquiShift system. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we're very proud of the LiquiShift system. We took what we know about the laminar flow with the metering tubes, and we turned that into an automatic system based on pressure. And basically, we operate as standard, the first tube from 20 psi to 70 psi, and then we will switch to the second tube, so an A and a B tube essentially. And that happens automatically based on pressure. And so with that, we can address variable rate applications, variable speed applications. I think with the advancement of high-speed planting, there are a lot of people that don't understand fluid flow dynamics. In fact, it's not one of those things that people just know. Like I say, I've been in this business a long time, and so it's taken a lot of time to know and understand, how this works. But with a high-speed planter, you may go from 2 to 10 miles per hour. Well, that's a 5-fold increase in the fluid flow rate that you need, and that is just with a set rate. That would be 5 gallons per acre, for example. And so with that, if you're going to have any rate control differences whatsoever, or rate changes, you bump up against physics. And so it requires a system like LiquiShift to be able to handle those wide rate changes. And we shift on the go. It happens back there. It happens with a small module that, I referred to SureFire Electronics makes, that you basically don't know it's back there. It works in conjunction with the Rate Controller 2000 or GRC or other precision ag platforms. And so it integrates very, very well. And not only on high speed, but, you may be a prescription application customer where you're generating prescription maps within your field, running 20 to 40 gallons per acre, and LiquiShift is a great system for that.
The last piece of the puzzle I want to talk about, it's an add-on feature that you can add on to any of the SureFire systems, liquid application systems. Traditionally, guys talk about the kind of the red ball sight glass gauge system to kind of show you the flow. You guys have something that goes above and beyond that called the Sentinel. Let's talk about Sentinel.
Yes. Sentinel has been developed over the last 5 to 6 years as well. And we use our same electromagnetic flow meter technology with Sentinel. They're just paired in 4s, and that allows us to share some of the electronics costs across each flow meter, making it more affordable to put a monitoring system on each row. So with that, we are getting a measurement and an on-screen reading of what's going through each row of the fertilizer system down to the 100th of a gallon. So Sentinel allows us to see what's going on with every row. And the best example I can give is think about a population monitor and how population monitors for seeds have evolved over time. That information is commonplace in the cab now. You're able to see every seed dropping, and that's the experience we want to give the grower on liquid application. So we've spent a lot of time internally developing Sentinel. Our engineers make it a high priority to keep advancing that product. A few years ago, we released the Isobus version of Sentinel. And at that time, there were a lot of people that thought they wanted everything integrated into one display. And that is a nice way to think about it. But what we've really found is growers have a lot going on in the cab. And so with the Isobus version, we have the ability to move that over to an armrest display or to a secondary monitoring system. And the customer has that information there at their fingertips on what's going on every row. And that flow meter technology is plus or minus 0.5%. And we're able to measure 10 ounces per minute or 3 gallons per acre on the bottom end, up to about 50 to 60 gallons per acre on the top end. So we have a very wide range there. So when you couple the pump right system with a 20-fold rate range, and then you add the flow meter in the main system to get the system very, very accurate and dialed into within plus or minus 0.5%, and then metering tube, and then you put Sentinel in there, you basically have a system to where you can hit the rates you want to hit no matter what your scenario is, and you have a confidence that you're going to be able to monitor those rows and pick up anything unusual that might be happening within your system.
Yeah, whether you use the manual dual tube system or you opt up to the liquid shift system, or maybe we're just using that standard red ball sight glass, or we opt up to the Sentinel system, you guys really have built a system with a bunch of different components that can really answer or provide a solution to any grower that's out there. With that, we are going to stop here with this episode and pick back up again with this conversation with Blaine in 2 weeks on our next episode, where we will talk more about the product offerings from SureFire Ag Systems. Thanks again for listening. Subscribe to this YouTube channel for upcoming podcasts, or visit rdoequipment.com/podcast to listen to new episodes and catch up on any that you've missed. You can also listen and subscribe to our podcast on any device or streaming service so that you will never miss out on the latest news and technology from RDO Equipment and John Deere.